What if Germany had entered the race of industrialization at the same time as Britain and France, instead of lagging behind until the late 19th century? In this video, we dive deep into a compelling alternate history, one where an early industrialized Germany reshapes the balance of power in Europe, accelerates scientific and military advancements, challenges colonial empires sooner, and possibly alters the course of both world wars. From political rivalries to global trade networks, we explore how an earlier German industrial boom might have rewritten the very fabric of modern world history. Imagine a world where Germany began its industrial revolution alongside Britain and France in the late 18th century, instead of decades later. In this alternate timeline, the fragmented German states, particularly Prussia and the Rhineland, rapidly embraced mechanization, coal mining, railroads, and mass production. This early industrial boom unites the German-speaking lands under economic necessity and nationalist ambition much sooner, leading to a stronger and more centralized German empire by the early 1800s, rather than in 1871. With industrial power comes military strength. A technologically advanced and economically robust Germany challenges French dominance on the continent far earlier, perhaps even changing the outcome of the Napoleonic Wars. Austria, unable to compete with Prussia's industrial might, loses its influence in Central Europe, leading to a quicker consolidation of power under Berlin. Britain's status as the workshop of the world is tested by a German rival that can produce steel, textiles, and locomotives with equal or greater efficiency. The balance of power in Europe begins to shift from a Franco-British axis to a Franco-German rivalry, with Britain forced into more cautious diplomacy to preserve its global interests. Colonial ambitions intensify sooner as Germany, flush with capital and hungry for resources and markets, pushes aggressively into Africa and Asia, competing with Britain and France in the early scramble for empire. The global map begins to look very different, with German colonies established decades before their actual historical presence. By the late 19th century, Germany is no longer the latecomer to power, but the dominant force in Europe, economically and militarily. Its early rise might even prevent or radically alter the events leading to World War I. A stronger, more established Germany may not feel as threatened or encircled, potentially easing the tensions that historically spiraled into global conflict. Or, on the contrary, a more powerful Germany might provoke earlier wars of dominance, changing not just European history, but the trajectory of the entire modern world. In an alternate history where Germany industrializes at the same time as Britain and France, the nation's scientific and military advancements are not only accelerated, but fundamentally reshape the pace of global progress. With industrial centers emerging across the German states by the late 18th century, universities and technical institutes quickly align with industry, creating a powerful synergy between scientific research and practical engineering. German inventors, chemists, and physicists, already among the brightest minds in Europe, are now backed by state funding, modern factories, and a national demand for innovation decades earlier than in our timeline. This early alignment leads to breakthroughs in chemistry, optics, metallurgy, and physics well before the mid-19th century. Figures like Karl Bosch, Fritz Haber, and Heinrich Hertz emerge a generation earlier, bringing forward developments in synthetic fertilizers, electromagnetic theory, and industrial chemistry. German universities become the epicenter of global science, attracting talent from across Europe and beyond, while German patents begin to flood international markets. Militarily, this scientific edge transforms the Prussian army into a high-tech force before the 1850s. Railroads are used more effectively for troop movements. Steel production fuels better artillery, and early innovations in ballistics and explosives give Germany a tactical advantage. By the time of the revolutions of 1848, Germany has already developed a professional, industrialized military force capable of suppressing unrest and projecting power across Europe. This allows Germany to unify sooner, not through fragile political deals, but through military dominance backed by cutting-edge technology. Other European powers, especially France and Britain, are forced to react. Arms races and rapid military modernization begin earlier. The pace of innovation in warfare quickens, with Germany often setting the standard. By the time the 20th century arrives, Germany is already a dominant global force, not just in terms of production or colonial reach, but as the world's leader in technological and military innovation. The timeline of global wars, alliances, and revolutions becomes unrecognizable, shaped by a Germany that never had to catch up, because it was leading from the start. In a world where Germany industrializes alongside Britain and France in the late 18th century, its entry into the race for global power begins not in the late 19th century, but generations earlier. With factories rising in the Rhineland and Saxony by the 1790s and railroads stretching across Prussia by the early 1800s, Germany quickly amasses the economic and technological strength needed to pursue overseas ambitions. Unlike in our timeline, where German unification and colonial expansion lag behind, this alternate Germany is already unified, or at least economically and militarily coordinated, by the mid-19th century, and begins challenging the colonial empires at their peak. Eager to secure raw materials for its industries and new markets for its goods, Germany launches expeditions to Africa, the Pacific, and Asia by the 1830s. Ports, protectorates, and trading posts start appearing under the German flag decades before their historical establishment. This earlier move into empire building puts Germany in direct conflict with Britain, France, and even Portugal and the Netherlands, nations that had, until then, dominated global trade and colonization. The balance of colonial power begins to shift. Germany's industrial efficiency allows it to build infrastructure, exploit resources, and deploy military forces with striking speed. German engineers construct railways and telegraph lines in their overseas territories faster than many rival powers, turning colonies into efficient extensions of the homeland's economy. In Africa, German claims compete with and often preempt British and French ambitions, leading to diplomatic standoffs and potential military confrontations as early as the 1840s or 1850s. This alternate timeline compresses the imperial age into a much more volatile and competitive period. Britain and France, long accustomed to dominating without serious European rivals overseas, are forced to strengthen their colonies militarily and economically to defend against German encroachment. The global order becomes multipolar far earlier, with German influence extending across oceans just as its political and military influence reshapes the European continent. By the end of the 19th century, the German colonial empire spans much of what had historically been divided among the older powers. Its early start not only shifts territorial control, but also alters the cultural, linguistic, and political legacy of colonialism worldwide. The long-term consequences ripple through the 20th century. Alliances form differently, resistance movements take new shapes, and the very nature of empire is transformed by Germany's early challenge to the global order. If Germany had industrialized alongside Britain and France in the late 18th century, the course of both world wars might have been fundamentally altered, or perhaps even prevented altogether. With early access to industrial power, Germany would have unified much earlier, consolidating its resources, manpower, and scientific achievements into a cohesive state by the mid-19th century. This stronger, more mature German empire would have entered the 20th century not as a rising challenger, but as an established superpower, reshaping the diplomatic landscape that historically led to war. In this alternate timeline, Germany's early industrialization gives it decades to solidify its alliances, expand its colonial reach, and secure economic partnerships, eliminating the sense of being encircled that historically drove its aggressive foreign policy. Instead of racing to catch up to Britain or France, Germany sets the pace, making it less likely to resort to military confrontation to prove its power. The web of alliances that triggered World War I could have looked very different. Perhaps Britain, viewing Germany as a longtime partner in trade and science rather than a sudden rival, might have remained neutral in European disputes. Austria-Hungary may never become as crucial an ally if Germany already dominates Central Europe. Even the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand might not have lit the same geopolitical fuse. But if a great war still breaks out, it does so under vastly different conditions. Germany, with decades of industrial experience, possesses more refined logistics, deeper stockpiles of arms, and a larger navy and air force than in our reality. The Schlieffen Plan may be unnecessary or entirely reimagined, with more advanced transportation networks and early aerial surveillance. Battles are won or lost not by attrition in trenches, but by superior infrastructure and real-time communication. The war might be shorter, more decisive, and less globally destabilizing, changing the fate of empires and the rise of revolution. The impact on World War II is equally profound. Without the humiliation and economic devastation of the Treaty of Versailles, because either World War I ends differently or doesn't happen at all, the conditions that gave rise to Hitler and the Nazi regime may never materialize. Germany could remain a constitutional empire or evolve into a strong democratic industrial state, leading Europe economically and politically rather than tearing it apart. The Holocaust, Nazi aggression, and the devastating consequences of global war in the 1940s might be entirely avoided. Alternatively, if global conflict still erupts in the mid-20th century, it may involve different ideologies, alliances, and technological stakes. An early industrialized Germany with a head start in science could have reached atomic capability before anyone else. The center of technological gravity might not be the United States, but Berlin. Whether this leads to a more dangerous world or a more balanced one depends on the leadership that grows from this industrial foundation. In either case, Germany's earlier industrialization would not be a minor shift. It would rewrite the very structure of global politics, diplomacy, and warfare, leaving the history of the 20th century almost unrecognizable. In this alternate history, where Germany industrializes alongside Britain and France in the late 18th century, the ripple effects are profound and far-reaching. Germany is no longer a latecomer scrambling for influence, but a foundational power that helps shape the modern world from the very beginning of the industrial age. With earlier unification, scientific dominance, military innovation, and colonial ambition, Germany redefines the balance of power in Europe and beyond. Its presence as a mature industrial empire alters the trajectory of diplomacy, warfare, and global competition, possibly preventing the catastrophic conflicts of the 20th century or transforming them into entirely different struggles. The 20th century could have been a century of German-led stability or even greater rivalry, depending on how this early rise was managed. What is certain, however, is that the world we know today, from borders to ideologies, would look dramatically different if Germany had not arrived late to the Industrial Revolution, but instead had helped ignite it.